Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere dark, tight and reeking of oil-soaked misery. You're hunched under a hatch, boots slipping on steel, and the moment you climb down the ladder, the air hits you. Stale, greasy, and so thick with sweat you can taste it. You're not in a ship, you're in a steel pipe with torpedoes and 30 other guys, none of whom have showered in a week. Welcome aboard a German U-boat. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. I'm always curious how far this sleepy little corner of history reaches. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You duck your head as the hatch clangs shut above. The first thing you notice isn't the darkness or the narrow corridor, it's the smell. A cocktail of diesel fuel, sour body odour, machine grease, and something suspiciously like rotting onions, and it doesn't fade. It grows stronger the farther in you go. You breathe through your mouth. Doesn't help. The passage is so narrow your shoulders scrape both walls. Pipes run above you, warm and sticky to the touch. You sidestep past a torpedo bolted into the wall like a giant silent passenger. Every inch of space is filled with wires, valves, bags as potatoes hanging from hooks, and men. So many men. You pass a sailor crouched by a hatch, his shirt soaked through, his head pressed against the bulkhead like it's the only cool spot in the boat. He doesn't even glance at you. No one does. You're the new guy. Fresh meat. And in this floating tin can, that doesn't earn you any favours. Your quarters. Ah, yes. There's a narrow bunk wedged above a torpedo rack. No curtain, no mattress. Just a thin pad and a smell you'll learn to accept. They call it hot bunking. That's not slang for something fun. It means you'll share this bed with 2 other guys, rotating in shifts. When you slide in, it'll still be warm from the last guy's body. Maybe even damp. If he had the flu, well, then you do now too. There's a storage locker under your bunk. Don't get excited. It's filled with sausages, ammunition, and spare valves. Your clothes? They'll stay in your bag, which will stay under someone else's feet. Nothing you own will ever be clean again. Even sitting feels like a privilege here. Every corner is claimed. Some guys nap, curled like cats in the torpedo room. Others sleep upright in the control room. One officer swears he sleeps standing, wedged between the radio console and a pipe. He might not be lying. The ceiling is low enough to bump your head every 15 minutes. There's a pipe just above eye level that everyone hits at least once. You'll develop a deep respect for helmets, even if you're not issued one. Just wait until the boat dives. That pipe gets real personal real fast. There are no windows, of course, no natural light. The only illumination comes from flickering red lamps and the occasional flashlight beam sweeping over faces like ghosts in a haunted house. Your body loses track of time almost instantly. Is it morning? Is it night? Doesn't matter. Time here is measured in watches, meal rotations, and the occasional scream of the dive alarm. You try to unpack your things, a toothbrush, a spare shirt, letters from home, a tin of foot powder someone told you to bring. You'll come to worship that powder like it's holy relics. Somewhere behind you, someone farts. No one flinches. The smell just joins the party. One guy offers you a cup of something that might be coffee, or maybe it's engine coolant. Hard to say. You thank him anyway. He nods once, eyes hollow, and disappears down the passage like a man condemned. Turns out he's been underwater for 32 days. You stop drinking the coffee. Historians still argue whether the worst part of U-boat life was the physical discomfort or the psychological toll. Honestly, from where you're standing, bent at the waist, surrounded by snoring bodies and leaking valves, it's a dead heat. You hear footsteps thud overhead. Not your crew, that's the deck. That means you're still surfaced, which also means you're still visible to aircraft. You hope you dive soon, but not too soon. The deeper you go, the hotter it gets. The air thickens, the boat sweats, and every sound becomes a potential threat. The U-boat itself is only about 200 feet long. Imagine trying to live, fight, sleep, eat, and breathe inside a subway car crammed with boilers and torpedoes and about 48 stressed out German men. Now subtract any notion of personal space. Add mildew, shake well. Your uniform, which once felt crisp and official, is already beginning to cling in the wrong places. Your boots are damp. Your socks smell like a pond. You wonder if it's possible to grow mould on your skin. Someone says yes. You don't ask how they know, and this is only day one. The officers are marginally better off. They have bunks with a little curtain and sometimes even a working light bulb. They share a single cramped room that smells faintly of cigarettes and old maps. You don't envy them though. They're the ones who have to make decisions, like who gets to breathe air on the next surfacing run and who gets sealed into the engine compartment if it floods. Leadership has its own kind of hell. You finally settle into your bunk, or try to. The ceiling is 6 inches from your nose. It's warm, too warm. You shift. Something creaks. A drip of condensation hits your eye. You close your eyes anyway. That's when the klaxon goes off. Red lights flash. Someone shouts. Boots thud on metal. You hit your head on the pipe, again, and stumble into motion. The boat dives. Fast. Your ears pop. The hull groans. Welcome to life inside a U-boat. No one said it would be easy, but they also didn't say it would smell this bad. You're starting to get used to it, or at least you've stopped gagging every time you inhale. That's progress. The stench of life aboard a U-boat isn't just bad, it's layered. You could write a whole novel about it. A tragic, greasy, onion-scented novel. It starts with a diesel, that heavy, clinging fuel smell that seeps into your skin, your hair, your thoughts. After a few days, you don't just smell it, you exude it. Your sweat, your breath, even your socks start giving off that sweet, poisonous tang. At first, it's disgusting. Then it's oddly comforting, like a sick sort of perfume. Eau de Maschinenraum. Then there's the food, or more accurately what's left of it. In the first week, the scent of fresh bread and sausages still lingers in the galley. You might even spot a tomato if you're lucky. But that phase doesn't last. The U-boat's humidity is unforgiving. Bread moulds within days. Vegetables turn to slime. Sausages? Well, you'll still be eating them weeks in, but they'll be shiny in all the wrong ways. After that, it's canned everything. Tinned cheese, tinned meat, tinned mystery. And underneath all of it, the lingering, ever-present aroma of boiled cabbage. Not because you're eating cabbage anymore, just because the smell has fused with the walls. The smell of the crew is something else entirely. You're all sweating constantly. The heat builds up fast once the boat submerges. The air is recycled, stale, and so heavy it feels like you're sipping soup through your lungs. You're limited to a few splashes of water a day, if that. Showers are reserved for emergency decontamination. Toothbrushing becomes optional. Shaving. Not unless you enjoy slicing your face in a lurching metal box. By day 5, your skin has a permanent sheen. You scratch without realizing it. Your uniform itches, and your socks. Don't get us started on the socks. Some sailors start rotating them like they're aging cheese. Others just give up and go barefoot. Foot rot is not just a theory. It's something you can smell. And this floating olfactory nightmare isn't limited to you. Everyone's got their own personal aura. You learn to identify crewmates by scent. Oh, that's Franz. He smells like pickled eggs and regret. What's worse is how it clings. U-boat leather jackets were infamous for trapping every foul note. Sailors used to say the coats were alive, and not in a poetic way. Historians still argue whether some of those jackets should have been buried out of mercy. Then there's the more delicate matters. Let's not pretend 50 men packed into a steel cylinder are going to be discreet. Flatulence is less a faux pas and more a communal language. You stop flinching after the first few days. Eventually you even start ranking them. The head, the toilet, is another olfactory antagonist, but we'll get to that in detail later. For now, just know this. It's right next to the galley. That's right. Your food is prepared a few feet from where 50 men perform their biological betrayals. One whiff of that particular combination, and you'll understand why most meals are choked down with eyes closed. Odour management on board? Pretty much non-existent. There's one tiny fan that wheezes behind the periscope column. It does nothing except blow stink from one end of the boat to the other, like a foul, humid breeze of futility. Some sailors try hanging little rags soaked in alcohol. Others light matches. A few brave souls open tins of strong mustard and just let it sit out. Chemical warfare, but on your own terms. One clever sailor ties a lemon peel to his collar like a charm. It rots within 3 days. Now he just smells like regret and citrus death. Sometimes, when morale is low, someone cracks open a tin of preserved peaches. The sweetness floods the compartment, and for a brief shining moment, the air smells like summer. Then someone burps, and it's gone. There's a myth that your nose eventually gets used to it. That's not true. What actually happens is something more insidious. You stop registering the smell, but it doesn't go away. It sinks in, into your clothes, your fingernails, your dreams. When you finally get shore leave, you'll walk into a room and everyone will turn to look at you. Not because you're in uniform, but because you smell like someone steamed a tyre with vinegar. One U-boat commander once said his men could be tracked by scent alone. That might not be an exaggeration. And don't even think about romance. U-boat veterans returning to their sweethearts were advised to bathe, shave and burn their clothing. One man claimed his dog ran from him when he came home. Another said he washed his hands 14 times and still couldn't get the smell of motor oil out of his wedding ring. On particularly long missions, those marathon 60-day patrols, the U-boat smell would start to become visible. No, seriously. A sort of greyish film would develop on the walls, a combination of condensation, mildew, and evaporated misery. You'd wipe it off with a rag. The rag would then be thrown into the sea, ceremoniously like a cursed object. There's one moment of relief, when the boat surfaces at night and the hatch opens. Cool, salty air floods down the ladder like a divine gift. You breathe it in greedily, chest heaving, eyes watering. Some guys stick their heads up and just breathe. 5-10 minutes straight. The sky above is velvet black. Stars, wind, freedom. Then the alarm sounds. You're diving again. Your hatch slams shut, and the air changes. You can hear it. That slow transition from fresh to foul, like someone replacing champagne with soup stock, and still you endure it. Because that's what life inside a U-boat demands. You don't get comfort. You don't get air fresheners or clean linens or lemon-scented hand soap. You get metal walls, damp clothes, and the constant reminder that you're not built for this environment. But somehow you adapt. You learn to sniff, shrug, and sleep through it. Because here, misery is part of the job, and the scent of survival is not a clean one. Privacy. Such a beautiful concept. Soft, civilized, like fresh linen or warm buttered bread. Luxuries that don't exist here. On a German U-boat, privacy is a myth, a fantasy whispered about during surface runs and passed around like a dirty joke. You won't find it down here, not even a sliver. You wake up nose to nose with someone else's armpit. He's snoring, loudly. You don't know his name yet, just that he smells like sour milk and car grease. You're in what they generously call a bunk. It's about the width of a coffin and stacked 3 high, top, middle, bottom. Yours is the middle, which means you're constantly inhaling the breath of the guy above you and catching occasional drips of condensation from the pipes overhead. Romantic, right? Hot bunking is the standard. 3 men per 2 bunks rotating in 6-hour shifts. When you slide into your assigned pad, it's still warm and often damp from the last guy's shift. No sheets, no pillow, no anything. Just a threadbare wool blanket and the fading hope that he didn't drool too much. There's an awkward etiquette to it all. You don't comment on the smells. You don't shift too loudly. You definitely don't make eye contact while switching places. Dressing is a synchronized dance of elbows and apologies. There's no changing room. There's no room, period. You learn to change a shirt while lying down, or with your arms pinned between lockers and bulkheads. Underwear. You'll rotate pairs until they beg for mercy. And shaving is done in front of a mirror the size of a cracker, wedged between a periscope shaft and someone's laundry bag. You hear every cough, every fart, every scratch. A guy a few feet away has a chest cold, and you've memorized the rhythm of his phlegm. Another keeps muttering in his sleep, something about potatoes and sinking. You don't ask. Even bodily functions become group activities. There's one toilet. One for 50 men. It's a tiny metal cubicle in the front of the boat, wedged between the torpedo rack and the forward crew bunks. There's no lock. The door doesn't fully close. If someone walks in on you, you both pretend not to notice. That's the rule. Another rule: never, ever forget to reset the flushing valves. But more on that horror show later. You want to talk to someone in private. Forget it. Every conversation is public. Even a whisper carries in this narrow steel tube. If you want to confess your deepest fears or cry over a letter from home, you'll have an audience. Silent, invisible, but listening. One guy tried writing in a journal. The others called it his diary of doom. It mysteriously disappeared after a week. The only place you might find a few moments alone is the torpedo room, if you're lucky enough to be on watch there at 0300, when everyone else is asleep and the engines are running low. But even then, you're sharing the space with live warheads and hanging sausages, which gives it a certain ambience. It's hard to be introspective when your foot's resting on a Mark 6 torpedo and a rat scurries past with what might have been someone's toothbrush. Some sailors invent mental compartments, little imaginary spaces they retreat to during downtime. One man says he's got a log cabin in the Black Forest he visits during rest breaks. Another claims he's dating a Swedish actress, and every time he lies back on his bunk they're going dancing in Stockholm. You nod politely and back away slowly. Even physical touch becomes a strange thing. You're constantly bumping into people, brushing shoulders, knees, backs, arms. There's no room to avoid it. At first, you apologize. Later, you stop bothering. Eventually, the crew becomes one big, sweaty, sleep-deprived organism with 100 elbows and a shared toothbrush. You're not friends. You're furniture. Hygiene. There's a sink. It spits cold water once every few hours. Soap is rationed. Towels are a luxury. You can't shower, not even on surface runs. Not enough water. That's reserved for drinking and engine cooling. So you wipe yourself down with rags, or if you're lucky, a splash of cologne. A few men carry small bottles of aftershave and dab it behind their ears like it'll make any difference. It doesn't. There's no escape. No going topside for a breath of air. No wandering into another room for a break. You're sealed inside a steel capsule surrounded by hundreds of feet of crushing seawater. When someone gets the flu, everyone gets the flu. When someone has a nightmare and thrashes around in their bunk, you all wake up. When someone snores loud enough to wake the dead, you throw your boot at the wall and hope they get the message. Historians still debate whether this extreme lack of privacy contributed to the psychological breakdown seen in long patrols. Some say yes. Humans need solitude to stay sane. Others argue it forged a kind of brutal camaraderie. Either way, you'll find out soon enough. Privacy isn't just a luxury here. It's a fading memory, a fairy tale. Even writing a letter home is a group event. You scribble in your lap, huddled under a flickering light while someone burps next to you, and another guy shaves his neck above you. You sign it with a smiley face, as if everything's fine. We're doing great down here. Smells like home. What's worse is that officers aren't immune either. Sure, they get a slightly bigger bunk and maybe a private locker, but their cabin is barely big enough for two men to stand shoulder to shoulder, and they're constantly being interrupted by crew, by sonar reports, by the cook needing to hang a bag of onions on their doorknob. Your commander hasn't had a private thought in weeks. He's developing a permanent twitch in his left eye. You try not to stare, and yet, somehow, the crew adjusts. You laugh at things you shouldn't. You make dumb jokes. You turn bodily noises into competitions. A guy draws a face on a potato and names it Gunter. You salute it every morning. It becomes normal. You learn that privacy isn't about being alone. It's about finding a tiny corner of silence inside your head and camping there with a flashlight. You learn to breathe through your mouth, sleep through noise, and dream with your eyes open. Because in here, surrounded by steel and steam and the endless sour breath of 50 other souls, the only real privacy is in your imagination. And even that's starting to feel a little crowded. You're hungry, again. But not the kind of hunger you remember from home. The playful kind, where you daydream about schnitzel and cake and then casually walk to the fridge. No, this is U-boat hunger. The kind where your stomach knots around itself like a rope and your brain starts looking at boiled potatoes like they're gourmet cuisine. And unfortunately for you, this is just the beginning of the U-boat culinary experience, a slow, grim descent from decent to barely digestible. It starts out deceptively pleasant. The first few days of a patrol, the food isn't awful. In fact, it's almost cheerful. You get real eggs, real bread, cold cuts, even fresh fruit if you're lucky and it's the summer season. The cook, usually some wiry guy with nicotine-stained fingers and a permanent scowl, manages to whip up soups, stews and things that vaguely resemble pancakes. But the U-boat pantry is a cruel mistress. You're deep in the Atlantic now, no resupply, no refrigeration worth mentioning, and the boat's body heat and humidity work against you like saboteurs. The bread starts moulding fast. You pick off the green parts, then you pick off the yellow parts, then you just stare at the crumbs and wonder if bread has a soul. Potatoes last longer, but they sprout. Long white roots that look like alien fingers. One guy starts naming them. He claims they whisper at night. You're not sure if he's joking. Canned food becomes your best friend and worst enemy. There's tinned meat, which tastes like rubber and smells like dog food, but you eat it anyway. There's tinned cheese, which starts out orange and ends up grey. And then there are the dreaded tins with labels scratched off. Russian roulette in food form. Could be peaches, could be pork fat, could be both. You eat with one eye closed and a silent prayer. Meals are served on rotation, in shifts. There's no mess hall, just narrow passageways and whatever flat surface you can find. You balance your tin on your knees or on the edge of a torpedo and try not to spill. Someone always spills. You share one spoon between 3 men. No one's quite sure whose turn it is. Eventually you all give up and use whatever utensil you can steal from the galley without getting yelled at. The cook operates in a tiny space no larger than a closet, surrounded by boiling pots, swaying walls, and a spice rack that consists of exactly 2 items, salt and despair. He works miracles with powdered milk and dried onions, but even miracles taste bland after a day 20. Once he serves up something called fake liverwurst. It's just mashed beans, butter and mystery meat. You pretend to like it. You have to. He's the only one keeping you from chewing on the leather straps in the torpedo room. And the worst part? You can't even escape it. The galley's aromas, if you can call them that, travel. They seep into the sleeping quarters, the engine room, even the command centre. If someone burns the porridge, the entire boat knows. If someone opens a can of sardines, it's a diplomatic incident. One guy accidentally drops his ration of pickled herring onto the floor. The scent lingers for 2 days. You almost believe it's growing stronger. Sometimes when morale is dangerously low, the cook breaks out the treats. Hard candy, chocolate bars, cans of condensed milk that have been hoarded like pirate treasure. You'd sell your last pair of dry socks for one of those. You dream about them, literally. You once woke up crying because in your dream you dropped your chocolate into a bilge pump. But those treats are rare. The norm is monotony. The same bowl of lukewarm gruel, eaten with the same dented spoon, surrounded by the same sweaty men in the same claustrophobic hallway. You chew slowly, not because you're savouring it, but because you're trying to convince your stomach that this counts as food. Historians still argue whether the declining food quality aboard German U-boats had a measurable impact on morale and mission performance. Some say it was one of the biggest contributors to combat fatigue. Others claim the men adapted. You're living proof that adaptation is a stretch. You're not adapting, you're just lowering your standards. And then there's the water. You don't drink much, you can't drink much. Fresh water is strictly rationed. Most of it goes to the engines and cooling systems. What's left is stored in tanks that, over time, develop a distinct metallic tang. Think rust tea with a hint of algae. You learn to sip it slowly. You learn not to ask why it sometimes looks slightly yellow. Coffee? Occasionally, if you're lucky. It's bitter and thick like something scraped off a boiler, but it's hot and it keeps you awake, so you drink it and pretend it doesn't taste like regret. One sailor tries to brew tea using a sock as a strainer. It doesn't go well. Another claims he's invented a new beverage by mixing powdered soup with marmalade. You report him to the medic, and let's not forget the flatulence. When 50 men eat the same fermented, fibrous, gas-producing sludge day after day, the boat turns into a trumpet section of bodily betrayal. At first, it's funny, then it's tragic. Eventually it's just white noise. You start timing them for sport. Someone suggests a leaderboard. The cook wins hands down. Eventually you stop caring. You eat what you're given. You scrape the mould off the bread, chew the rubber meat, and down the yellow water. Because there's no alternative. There's no escape. There's just the slow countdown to the day you surface and taste real air again. Maybe even a tomato. A fresh one. Until then, you learn to swallow your standards, along with the mystery stew. And if you're really desperate, there's always Gunter the potato. He's looking plumper every day. It happens fast. One moment, you're picking lint out of your soup and half listening to a crewmate's story about his cousin's accordion. The next, every light goes red. A low, grating buzz howls through the hull. Someone shouts, "Alarm!" You don't need to be told what that means. Depth charges. And suddenly you're scrambling to your post, sloshing through ankle-deep condensation, heart hammering like a depth gauge needle. The U-boat is diving, hard, fast, too fast. You can feel it. The downward lurch, the pressure shift in your ears, the way the hull seems to tighten around you like a vice. The ballast tanks are flooding. Somewhere valves are hissing. Men shout numbers. Boots hammer on steel. A wrench falls with a deafening clang. And beneath it all, that horrible silence, waiting for the enemy to confirm they've seen you. You want to pray. You don't know who to pray to, but you whisper anyway. Then comes the first one. A low whump, distant and muffled, like someone slapping the ocean with a giant hand. You flinch anyway. Everyone does. Your stomach clenches. You don't even realise you're holding your breath until someone next to you exhales, like he's just surfaced from drowning. The second one hits closer. The entire hull groans, a deep metallic moan that seems to come from inside your bones. Dust and rust flakes rain from the ceiling. One of the gauges jumps. A light flickers. You grip the edge of the console and try not to look like you're about to lose your lunch because the cook already did. It's sliding across the floor in a metal bowl. The third is a direct hit. Not on the U-boat, thankfully, but close enough to slam every man a few inches sideways. Something crashes in the engine room. Someone yells. You feel the tremor in your teeth. You check the hull for leaks. Nothing yet. But that doesn't mean you're safe. Depth charges are simple devices. Just barrels filled with explosives dropped into the sea, timed to explode at preset depths. But when you're inside a submarine, they're anything but simple. Each one is a question. Did they see us? Did they hear us? Are we going to be crushed, cooked, or both? Historians still debate how effective depth charges actually were. Some say they were mostly psychological weapons, rarely fatal, but terrifying enough to shake the crew to pieces. Others insist they played a vital role in the Allied effort to cripple the U-boat fleet. Either way, you're here, and they're dropping. So the debate feels pretty theoretical. Someone turns off the engines. The boat goes silent. The idea is to make the sub as invisible as possible. No sound, no movement, no clue. You drift like a dead fish. Your ears strain for any hint of what's happening outside. Then the fourth one comes. It feels like the sea itself is clapping its hands right next to your head. The hull compresses with the deafening thoom, and for a split second, You swear the lights dim. You think about the steel surrounding you, just a few centimetres thick, and the fact that beyond that it's just crushing black water and pressure. Your depth gauge ticks slowly downward. 180 metres, 190, 200. You know the maximum safe depth is around 220. After that, the hull starts to become a maybe. And still, the charges fall. You start to imagine what would happen if the hull cracked. Just a hairline split. Would the water spray in like a hose? Or would it just implode instantly like stepping on a tin can? The commander stays calm, or pretends to. He sits at the periscope station, back straight, jaw set. He doesn't speak, doesn't blink. You can almost hear the math happening in his head. Speed, angle, depth, noise. You admire him. Then you notice his hand is trembling. Another detonation. You're past fear now. This is something else. Something colder. You look around. One sailor is muttering a prayer. Another is drawing tiny circles on his pant leg with a pencil stub. One guy is staring into space with a half smile, like he's watching a cartoon no one else can see. You realise your jaw hurts. You've been clenching it for 10 minutes. The air starts to change. You hadn't noticed it until now, but the longer you sit silent, the heavier it gets. The CO2 levels are rising. Your breath starts to feel thick, like breathing through cotton. Your head aches. Someone near the back vomits. You close your eyes. Then, silence. No explosions. No sonar pings. Just the hum of water pressing in on all sides. You wait. 1 minute. 2. 5. Still nothing. The commander gives the signal. Slowly the engines restart with a whine. The boat shudders, then eases forward, rising a little, just enough to avoid scraping the seabed. Someone laughs. It's not a happy laugh. More like the laugh of someone who's just been told they almost lost everything, but gets to go back to eating canned peas and hot bunking. But still, it's a laugh. You made it. This time. It doesn't always end that way. Some U-boats never resurface. Some dive to escape and never return. You think of those men, trapped, crushed, erased by the deep. No last messages, no graves, just silence. There's a saying among the crew, the sea doesn't hate you, it just doesn't care. And you're starting to believe it. You stretch your legs carefully, your knees are stiff, your hands still shake a little. You take a drink of water that tastes like rust and cough syrup. You're alive, and you're back in motion. The commander calls for a change in course. Just a few degrees, a small adjustment, but you all know what it really means. Avoid that patch. Too dangerous, too close. The cook, ever the optimist, starts preparing another meal. Something in a can, naturally. You can hear the pop of the tin opener. It sounds almost cheerful. One of the older sailors pats you on the back. Your first depth charge run, he says. You didn't scream, that's good. You nod, unsure whether to be proud or deeply concerned. And then, as if the whole thing were just a bad dream, everything resets. The boat hums, men return to their posts. The stench of cabbage and diesel returns like an old friend. You crawl back into your still warm bunk and lie there, eyes open, heart slowing. But you don't forget. You never forget. Because once you've sat in silence while the sea tried to shake you apart, you know, deep down, that life aboard a U-boat isn't just about surviving the sea, it's about surviving the fear. It's day. Something. You've stopped counting. Time blurs inside this metal tube. No sunlight, no clocks, just endless cycles of waking up sweaty, choking down greyish food, and listening to the heartbeat of the engines thrum through your spine. You don't need a calendar anymore. You can track the days by smell. And right now, you smell like burnt oil, foot rot, and someone's forgotten onion stash. There's a saying on board: if you still care about hygiene, you're new. And judging by the crust around your collar, and the way your armpits now qualify as biological weapons, you're no longer new. You haven't showered. Of course not. Showers exist in theory, like unicorns or peace treaties. There's a small metal cubicle near the engine room labelled washroom, but it hasn't functioned since week 1. Instead, you have field hygiene, which means wiping yourself down with a damp rag and praying no one walks in mid-scrub. You've got 3 sets of clothes. One is damp, one is filthy, and one is being used as a pillow. So you rotate them based on moisture level and stink tolerance. Socks are the real problem. Trapped inside rubber-soled boots for 18 hours a day, your feet start fermenting. When you peel your socks off at night, they make a noise, and not a friendly one. Your boots are caked with grease from the engine room. Your fingernails are black with oil. And the back of your neck constantly itches, like your skin is trying to escape. One guy has developed permanent rash under his arms. Another has athlete's foot so advanced it's been named and ranked. You tried washing your face this morning, managed to splash 3 tablespoons of water into your palm before the pump coughed and sputtered out. It was warm. Not because of any hot water system. No, that broke ages ago. It's just that everything here is warm. The air, the pipes, the floor. Even the spoon you eat with feels like it's been sunbathing in a boiler room. Let's talk about that air for a second. It's heavy, wet, thick, like walking through someone's exhaled breath. The CO2 levels creep higher with each hour submerged. Your lungs adapt, but your brain protests. Headaches, dizziness, constant fatigue. One sailor swears he hasn't had a deep breath since Norway. Another claims his dreams are foggy because his brain is running on half oxygen. You'd laugh, but that would take energy. The engineers sometimes set up oxygen candles to freshen things. Sounds delightful, right? It's not. They're little chemical cakes that burn slowly, releasing breathable air. And sulphur. Lots of sulphur. One minute you're grateful for the fresh air, the next you're gagging like someone lit a rotten egg on fire. The engine room is its own brand of hell. Hot, loud, and soaked in oil. The diesel engines roar like angry gods when surfaced. When submerged, the electric motors hum with a deep vibration that crawls up your bones and sets your teeth buzzing. If you're assigned back here, you never stop sweating. Your shirt clings to your spine. Your face is slick. You drink cup after cup of lukewarm water and still feel parched. You learn to navigate the boat by feel. Which pipes burn, which corners leak, which hatches are safe to lean against. There's one spot behind the torpedo tubes that's always cool. It's a prized resting spot. The moment someone moves, another guy slides in like it's a game of greasy musical chairs. Smell, heat, noise. They merge into a constant pressure. You stop noticing until you surface. Then the hatch opens and the night air rushes in. Cold, clean. You feel it in your soul. You climb halfway up the conning tower just to breathe. You don't even care about the risk. For 5 precious minutes the world smells like salt and stars. But you can't stay up there. You're spotted maybe. Radar's pinging. The commander orders a dive. You slide down the ladder. Hatch slams shut. And the pressure seals in once more. You swallow the memory of fresh air and head back to the oily dark. Historians still argue whether the environmental conditions inside U-boats directly caused long-term health issues, There's evidence of respiratory damage, skin infections, even psychological degradation tied to the sensory overload. But no one really needed data. The sailors lived it. You, right now, are living it. A crewmate walks past you. His face is slick with sweat. He smells like onions and kerosene. He nods. You nod back. That counts as a conversation. The cook's boiling cabbage again. The aroma wraps around the boat like a damp blanket. You wonder what your house back home smells like. Soap, maybe. Fresh coffee. Pine floor polish. You'd give anything to stand in a clean hallway. Someone starts scrubbing the floor near the battery compartment. Not because it helps, just because it makes them feel human. It's a performance, really. You clean something for 2 minutes and then watch it get immediately redirtied by the grime in the air. But still, it matters. It's a rebellion against the decay. Then there are the leaks. Small at first, just a drip. Then another. You tape them, plug them, ignore them. You pretend the sea isn't pushing against the hull like a fist waiting to punch through. One day, someone notices moisture beading on a pipe that shouldn't be wet. You all stare. Nobody says a word. Later you each pass that pipe quietly, like tiptoeing past a sleeping bear. You haven't mentioned your rash. You should. But the medic has run out of powder. He's rationing iodine. You decide it can wait. It always can. And yet, despite all of this, you function. You clean your weapon. You monitor the sonar. You man your post. You joke about whose boots are growing mushrooms. You draw smiley faces in the grime on the walls. You survive. There's a strange kind of pride in it. Enduring this. Not because you're a hero, but because you simply don't stop. You wake. You work. You stink. You sweat. And you keep going. And somewhere, far above, the surface glistens in the moonlight. The stars wheel on, uncaring. But down here, below the waves, you're part of a strange, stinking, grinding machine of men and metal. And somehow, that's enough. Let's talk about the toilet. Or, as the crew sometimes calls it, das Porzellan der Verzweiflung. The porcelain of despair. There is exactly one toilet on board this entire steel coffin, and it is not located in some private tucked-away corner. No, it's practically on stage, in the forward compartment, just a few awkward feet from where people eat, sleep, and pretend they're not all breathing the same recycled air. Privacy? Forget it. The only door is a flimsy sheet of metal that doesn't even latch properly. Everyone knows when you go. Everyone hears when you go. The thing itself is a marvel of German over-engineering. It's not just a toilet. It's a pressure-locked, valve-laden contraption that could double as a small reactor core. That's because when you're underwater, waste can't just be flushed willy-nilly into the ocean. It has to be carefully pressurized, routed and ejected without compromising the boat's stealth, or, worse, inviting the Atlantic into your pants. Using the head is an ordeal. First, you pump one valve to fill the bowl with seawater. Then you do your business, while balancing on a narrow seat in a boat that lurches like a drunken goat. Then, a sequence of 7 valves must be operated in exact order to flush. Get it wrong, and the whole system backfires. One sailor once flipped valve 6 before valve 4. The result was a spectacular geyser of sewage and seawater that flooded the compartment, fouled the torpedo racks, and permanently ruined everyone's appetite for tinned herring. The toilet had to be closed for 2 days after that. 2 days. 50 men. One overflowing bucket system hastily rigged in the engine compartment. The engineer who caused the disaster, he got the nickname Captain Brownwater. It's stuck. But even when the system works, it's a miserable experience. The seat is always damp. Always. The metal is cold when surfaced and weirdly warm when submerged. The tiny compartment reeks of 1,000 panicked flushes and unsuccessful sprays of disinfectant. If someone ahead of you was in a hurry, odds are the whole setup is less than clean. You consider hovering. Then you remember how unstable the boat is and decide to risk it. Also, there's no light in there. Or rather, the bulb burned out sometime last week and hasn't been replaced. You do everything by feel now, which adds a fun layer of danger when dealing with a valve system that could, if improperly handled, turn you into a cautionary tale. Then there's the waiting. During high alert moments, like after a depth charge barrage, the crew goes quiet, tense, and also, mysteriously, everyone suddenly needs the toilet. The line forms silently, men clutching their stomachs, shifting from foot to foot, pretending they're just passing through the forward compartment. One guy sings to himself while waiting. No one finds it charming. And remember, this single, maddening contraption is also located just a few feet from the galley. So while someone's trying to boil a tin of greasy sausage, someone else is audibly struggling with the 7 valves of doom.